Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So I think there are enough pieces to put together a theory on what's happening with the relics from the Season of the Plunder. It's worth noting that this video comes with a spoiler warning on it, and that's generally because it goes into the deeper facets of the story as presented thus far. However, it's also because there are lots of spoilers out there on YouTube on channels that have just posted them without warning. And so, whilst I am halfway through writing this video, as I made this little addendum and found out about all this, I still wanted to go ahead and use this opportunity to, well, release the video I was going to release anyway, but give you all the relevant spoiler warnings. The point I'm trying to make here is to be careful and to not scroll about in YouTube if you're looking to keep unspoiled on the seasonal story. I know I'm going to be curating my own YouTube content as time goes on. I'd also, as a result, stay away from the comment sections on videos if you want to keep away from people who might try to spoil things as well. And I say that with some irritation, because that hurts the videos that I make, and I hate having to police everything. But here we are. I will not be able to get to every single comment because that's impossible. But this is your early warning. Stay away from the comment section in case you do get spoiled. Regardless, today we're going to be looking at things that have been released, building up theory from that, and anything that I talk about has already been released and is visible within the story of Season of the Plunder or other parts of the lore already. I'm covering nothing that has not been released. So, let's go ahead and talk about those relics, and let's now use this opportunity to speculate as to what's actually inside them. Well, not so much speculate about what's inside them, more so to talk about why what's inside them matters. So let's clue everyone in on the basics for where we are right now in the story. Both our crew and the ones under the command of Eramis are all searching for these relics from across the system. These relics are being held by a variety of pirate gangs and pirate lords that control them out in the Themis cluster, and we're all fighting to retrieve the vital intelligence as well required in order to actually go out and find out which pirate lords have them. We've recovered 3 relics thus far, and we've also figured out a lot of other bits of information that may prove important to know. So far we know that the relics were known to both Mithrax and the Spider before we started our search for them, though neither of them have been particularly forthcoming about the nature of these strange objects. We all know that it was the Witness that sent Eramis in search of these objects, and that they are filled with some sort of dark energy that is being actively shielded within each relic, a little bit like uranium can be shielded by lead. This shielding is something that Ido has been thus far unwilling to bypass, and she has been unwilling to open any of the relics in doing so. However, this time around, I think that some of the new information that we've been gathering might be enough to open up this mystery and to tell us at least a little more about what the relics are. It starts with this interaction between Eris Morn and the Drifter, which tells us some really important details about the relics. Take a listen to this. It's an excerpt from the end of Week 3's seasonal story.
I kept this part quiet. I think half of those pirate lords didn't know what they had to begin with. They knew these things were powerful, but not why. Crack one open and you'd find a finger bone or a knot of old hair. Strong stuff. Smells awful. Ask me how I know. I've been holding on to them, but I figured you might want them.
Why?
I thought to myself, you know who might like something strange and unsettling? Eris Morn.
A gift, then?
Well, yeah, Moondust. You could call it a gift.
The sentiment is appreciated, but no. You know what you possess. These relics are not simple curiosities to be hoarded. They might serve a greater purpose.
And what's that?
Am I your conscience? Discover this for yourself. They are reliquaries, objects of great power. The darkness moves just beneath its skin. Do you feel it? It ruptures, flows, envelops.
Ooh, I like listening to you talk.
And I enjoy your silence.
So there are 2 really key things that we learn from this note here. First of them comes from the Drifter, and it's that he had access to at least one of the relics, and that he opened it. What he found inside is, well, kind of disgusting. It's essentially organic remains, the remains of body parts. Odd bit, but at least it gives us a solid start. The interior of the relics all seem to contain body parts. We also know that there are old Vanguard reports that categorize the contents of the relics in a similar manner, so it's not just Drifter's one odd relic. He is correct in stating that most or all of them contain body parts. Take a listen to Ido's words on the matter.
I've been trying to determine what exactly is inside these reliquaries, but I dare not open them. The resulting surge of darkness energies would have unforeseeable effects on my physiology. However, I did manage to secure a centuries-old Vanguard mission report from the Cryptarchy. The reporting Guardian said that Elixni crews were infighting over what he called, quote, chunks of rotting meat. The report is of dubious quality, but it did make me wonder if the relic could be biological in nature.
So that's all gross, but fascinating. But where do we go from here? Back to Eris, because really it starts again with the interesting notes that she had to say on the relics, and this is what really cracks the entire mystery open, because she uses an important descriptor to the relics. She doesn't call them relics, she calls them reliquaries. This is actually an important word in terms of understanding the context behind these relics, because it harkens back to what reliquaries and relics really are in the context of ancient Christianity, which I believe is some of the lore which this is being drawn from. Reliquaries in Christian lore are literal stores for relics, but more importantly, in the old days, relics commonly included the body parts of saints or important religious figures. Some reliquaries even claimed that they contained some of the remnants of Jesus Christ, Christianity's Son of God. The context behind such a word is important in this instance because it provides us context to the function of these relics and why they might have bodily remains in them. If they're reliquaries, they contain the remains of important figures in many instances. But these are reliquaries that emanate darkness and have some tie to the witness. So, new question. Are the remains inside these relics the equivalent of a saint or a powerful entity related to the witness's forces? Further question, what is the equivalent of a saint to the witness? This is where our rabbit hole really begins. If we're really to consider that idea, I think we need to point to the clear idea that a powerful lieutenant of the darkness has had their remains interred, that is to say stored, within the relics. If that is true, then perhaps this is the witness's attempt to resurrect a powerful servant under its command, perhaps even one of its disciples. Keep in mind, I bring up the disciples here because we still don't know a lot about the leadership structure of the witness's forces, and as best we know, it is a unit that truly comprises of only 3, namely the witness itself, its disciples, and then any lower forces under their command. So realistically, a disciple is the only rank that we have which may be appropriate and fitting to an individual bound within a reliquary of darkness. It's here that we need to look into who that figure that may be bound in the reliquaries might be, and I think we need to look into the words stated by the Drifter to really understand what's going on with all of this. Take a listen to what he said a few weeks back regarding the reliquaries.
Boom, 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 boom. Ah, hey there, hero. Sorry, getting a little swept up in all this adventuring. I'm on debrief duty while your Elixni buddies are busy with the relics you got from Aramis's crew. Ido's researching how to tap into their power. The kid's thorough, I'll give her that. She thinks something's hidden inside 'em. I swear she was about to crack one open before Mithrax stopped her. Now me? I took one look and knew those things were bad news. Gave me a little shiver. Reminds me of something. From a long time ago. Maybe I should do a little research of my own.
The reliquaries remind Drifter of something, and he even was reminded of it to the point where he dredged up one of those relics after doing his own research. So the Drifter has clearly had some kind of interaction with these in his past, and there's a lot of interesting stuff in the Drifter's past that overlaps with Darkness. As best I can think, there are really two things where the Drifter has an overlap. The first of which is that entire planet's worth of darkness. A planet's worth of darkness that he found with his crew that all died. Furthermore, it's a planet which was filled with beings capable of emanating a darkness aura, something that seems not too dissimilar from the darkness fields provided by the relics. However, keep in mind these darkness fields in the relics are suppressed, which means that you might not necessarily see the same effect. But then we have to look at the other side of the Drifter's history, and this is the thread that I really wanted to tug on, because it actually potentially involves someone who might have been a disciple. If you saw my videos from back in the Season of the Haunted, you know that I've been talking about an old mysterious figure known as Nezarec. Nezarec is of relevance here firstly because he is a disciple, but also because he is a common thread between the Drifter and the current relics. Not only were we seeing signs of Nezarec in the last season, namely his glaive and the Chantry of the Darkest Hour, but there were a few signs that he was a disciple of the Witness. If we're to really dig in and believe that evidence, and thus that Nezarec was a disciple, then there is a link that can be made between the relics and the Drifter's past. It's found, unsurprisingly, within the Artifacts and Old Friends lore entry, where the Drifter was discussing his past and his adventures in his past with none other than the infamous wielder of the last word, Shin Malphur. The relevant excerpt of Shin's account for the conversation in question reads as follows. By chance, he and I crossed paths in a neutral setting. Didn't give me his name, just called himself a Drifter. Told him if that's how it was, he could call me pal. He laughed at that, got comfortable, got all kinds of open about where he'd been and what he was hauling. Even dropped a tip on where an old friend of mine was hiding. I still wonder if he knows who I really am. He told me he left the system as soon as he was risen. Not immediately sure. Had to get his bearings, find a ship, get it fit, get it flying. But soon as, he was good as gone. Drawn to the outer, he says. I can appreciate. He says he's seen the deep side of Jupiter, been to the core mines of Saturn, name drops old myths no one's heard, the Luvial Crux, the shift chasms below Ilios, the fourth tomb of Nezarec. Goes on about the idols of Lower Sul, the treasure of Extus Prime, the solar engine of Dead Star 6. I think he's making most of it up, but he's got relics and etchings. He's got materials, not of this system. Odd metals, obsidian flames, thought engines, edible null cakes, and a stuffed something that looks like a rabbit biofused with a cephalopod. He keeps all this stuff to himself. His gets, he calls them. If they're for show, they put on a great one. But to what end? A renegade's observations of a Drifter. Did you get that? When reading this, first I sat and thought that the Drifter had visited the fourth tomb of Nezarec. But it doesn't actually say that specifically. It says that the Drifter name-dropped the old myth of the fourth tomb of Nezarec, a myth that no one had really heard of. And here's the thing. Much as it makes sense for a tomb to be a place, I want you all to expand your thoughts on the matter and think of a tomb as more of a thing, an object as much as a place, an object that has a simple purpose, to store the remains of the dead. It doesn't necessarily need to be large, it can be small. It is a certain location and it is contained, but it is not necessarily a location set in the ground of something. Maybe it is small enough that it can be a reliquary. You see, this is the theory that is being pushed around various lore circles right now, which is that the tomb of Nezarec, which the Drifter has encountered, and the reliquary are technically similar in purpose, or perhaps even the same. After all, the Drifter produced one of these reliquaries for Eris, and this is, well, we've got 3 of them through the 3 weeks of the seasonal story. Maybe in the 4th week we'll actually see the Drifter drop the relic there for us. So, let's go ahead and put all these different pieces together, because the Drifter and the Vanguard's reports have some interesting overlap, there's a lot of theory that goes into this, but maybe it tells us something. These are the different pieces that we know for sure. 1. The relics are shrouded in darkness of a kind that is contained. 2. They have clearly existed for quite some time, considering that the pirate crews of old used to have them in their possession. 3. We know that they are better described by Eris as reliquaries. 4. We know that the Drifter has held on to at least one of them. 5. We know that these reliquaries contain the body parts and biological remains of something. And 6. We know that the Drifter has interacted in some regard with the fourth tomb of Nezarec. Now granted, that last one is less of a know and more of a suspect, because the Drifter is not often one to be believed and trusted, and half of the stuff he says is not necessarily true. But if we are to keep that in our theory, then everything starts to point to this. If Nezarec has multiple tombs, what if the reliquaries are those tombs? Each reliquary contains certain smaller portions of body parts. Each of these reliquaries contains a great degree of darkness energy, and if Nezarec was a disciple, that would explain why this darkness energy exists. This theory raises a number of questions, though. First amongst them is how Nezarec died, and if he can be brought back to life. It is assumed that Eramis is gathering these fragments on behalf of the Witness, and this might be a reasonable explanation as to why she's doing that. If the Witness can bring back Nezarec, then it might have a powerful ally at its disposal. There are the questions about whether Nezarec is actually an ally to the Witness in the first place, but if we're to follow the theory and to even ask that question, we have to accept the premise that the Witness did indeed have Nezarec amongst its disciples at one point. This theory already runs a crazy gambit of different questions, but it leads me to the seasonal exotic, more than anything else. Delicate Tomb, a name that suddenly becomes a lot more suspect, and it's my last observation for the video today. When I read this exotics lore tab, it has a variety of different things that really present themselves in a strange manner, and I think it's worth pointing some of those out. The lore tab itself is really strange unless you have some kind of perspective you're reading it from, I think. Before we read it though, I think it's worth aesthetically pointing a few things out. First of all, the weapon is covered in pyramids. There's one below the barrel, one below the sights, one on the trigger, and two around the stock of the weapon. They're even painted on the side of the weapon's barrel and firing chamber. You then need to look at the designs here on the side. These kind of strange waveforms that are put into a place where it looks a little bit like an ellipse. These symbols, I don't know about you guys, but they remind me of the symbols that you can find in the Vow of the Disciple raid, and in particular the overall shape that contains them. This sort of waveform above and below that creates a shape that almost looks like an eye. This thing, it may seem bright and almost beautiful, but its design reeks of pyramid concepts, and it's all very subtly baked in, but it is there. So let's think about everything we've discussed. Think about the perspective of perhaps Nezarec, and then let's look at the lore tab, and maybe let's read it from the perspective of Nezarec, who is one of the disciples perhaps, and one who might have his remains contained within the reliquaries. The danger within is repulsive to us. They mistake the vessel for its contents. They confuse the pieces with the whole. They see their imprisonment as empowerment. They are hostages of their flesh, unable to see without vision, unable to hear without sound, unable to slake their thirst for fear of drowning. Their ignorance is their saving grace. Yet one among them understands in their limited fashion. They pour from one vessel to another, a welcome change, a new form, another method of gifting death. I am made finite, personal, bright, and delicate to hide my true form. An intimacy. They think me contained, but I am instead diffused, as vapor upon the wind. Once again, I am becoming. If this is spoken from the perspective of Nezarec, is it perhaps referring to the reliquaries? If Eramis was to collect them and open them and combine their contents, would she be able to give the disciple a new form? It'll take some time to see if this theory pans out or not, and let's not forget that there are other possibilities afoot. But it's not impossible that these relics have connections to other facets of the story of the darkness. For the moment though, this theory is undoubtedly most fascinating. We'll see what happens as time moves on. Will the Disciples' remains be what's in the reliquaries? Or is it something stranger still? Let me know what you think down below. Of course, if you want more Destiny content from the Season of the Plunder, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. If you liked the video, go ahead and leave a like and show your support. But of course, know that your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Perodasia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.